I'm Trish.
And I'm Brandy.
And you're listening to episode 13 of
Connected Conversations. This is your go-to space where international teachers, leaders, and parents like us get together for real talk, real tips, and sharing tools to thrive abroad in the international schools world.
Between us, Brandy and I have been doing this international teaching gig for nearly 40 years across 4 countries, 4 continents, that is,
Yeah,
and 8
more.
countries, and soon to be more, okay? And working with more types of school curricula and styles than we can even count.
So whether this is your first job hunt abroad or even your 5th or 6th or 7th, we know that those contracts you're about to sign can feel a little daunting at times.
Yeah, and today we're going to look more closely at international teaching contracts, trying to break down some of the similarities you might see across countries and put your mind at ease regarding some of these things that can really look foreign when you're first dealing with that contract abroad.
That's right. Today we want to help you understand what you can often expect, what you may be able to negotiate with, and what you can absolutely feel free to ask and clarify before signing that metaphorical and maybe literal dotted line.
Today's episode is part of our Teacher Toolbox series, where we share practical strategies, tips, and tools to strengthen your international teaching practices.
And understanding your next contract is one of those foundational practices. It can be exciting, especially if you are leveling up, but it can also feel overwhelming as you want to make sure you're being treated fairly and entering into a promise that will be financially advantageous for both you and your long-term planning goals.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're balancing it all well. Salary, benefits, job description, location, future growth, all of it. Okay, the whole package needs to feel right.
And we want to give you some of our hard-earned insights from our experiences. Think of these tips as your basic contract abroad pro tips. Of course, they aren't fully inclusive to every single place in the world, but they should give you some key contract differences you may encounter, including how detailed international contracts often are, as well as where and when you may be able to negotiate that bottom line number.
Right. In addition, we're going to cover some of the built-in protections international contracts often include, as well as some regional realities of contract styles.
So, are you ready? Grab your pen and paper and let's get started. It's time to
get connected. Let's start with contract details. Now, it's been a long time since I signed my American school contracts way back in Washington State and in Minnesota, but my recollection is that they were pretty comprehensive and really a little bit lengthy, okay? As a matter of fact, there's currently a copy online of my old school district back in Minnesota, and it's listed as 37 pages long, including 8 different appendices spelled out with all of the salary scales and the extracurricular payments that are available to teachers.
Whew, so be prepared. This is not often what you see when you're out teaching abroad. In most of my schools here in the Czech Republic, my contracts have been really short. I mean, like only a few pages, and often in a bilingual format where one column was in English and the other column was in Czech. And the contract simply stated the position title, the start and the end date, the salary, the standard things, also the total weekly hours expected, around 40, and the notice period I would need to give when I wanted to leave. There wasn't even a full job description attached.
Yeah, I've definitely signed contracts like that as well. And often you'll see them at bilingual or local schools. If you need a reminder of what those schools look like, head back to episode 3, where we broke down all the types of international schools that you might encounter out here.
That's right. And these bilingual contracts raise a few other questions, such as which version is legally binding, the English version or the local language one? And is it a red flag if the job description is vague or missing?
Oh, they're really good questions. And from my experience with bilingual contracts, now in China, Malaysia, Thailand, Czechia, like the local language is the one that's legally binding. It never hurts to put it through your favorite translator app and just confirm things before you sign.
Yeah, and we're not suggesting schools are trying to trick you in any way. But for some of you new to this international teaching realm, we're here to tell you that short contracts and home language legalese don't necessarily mean that anything is wrong. I don't know of any school who wants to invest to bring you over from abroad only to trick you or to do harm to your career. That would in turn harm their school reputation.
For sure. And what we're saying here today is that you often need to look at the origin of some of these schools, right? My shortest contracts have come from what I would call mom and pop startup schools, or from schools where international parents may have moved together to a country, maybe back in the 1960s or 70s. They banded together and they started a school from scratch, and their expertise may not actually be on the legalese side or the teaching side. They set set up a simple, standard employment contract that fulfills all of the local condition requirements.
Yeah, that's really true. And many
Mhm.
times these smaller schools aren't even aware what other teaching contracts look like. It's not like they're going around sharing their contracts with each other. As a matter of fact, many contracts say right on it
Mhm.
that you cannot share the details with anybody else on risk or upon risk of termination. This is super common.
Yeah, I hope we're not going to get terminated for sharing this information. Sorry. Okay, trying to help you. Okay. The simple truth is that schools that are started globally as passion projects to serve the local community without an educator leader at the helm often have short and simple contracts.
Right.
We want you to know that. But this doesn't mean that working there should concern you in any way. It can be incredibly rewarding.
And if you're in doubt at all about the shortness or lack of details in your contract, here are some questions that you could ask.
Mhm.
Number one, I see my contract is bilingual. Which language version is legally binding? Not
All
blinding.
blinding, Brandy.
It feels
All
blinding. Which one is legally binding if concerns arise?
Mhm. Or question 2, I don't see the job description or specific teaching club time requirements listed in the contract. Can you maybe provide me with that so I'm clear that we're both agreeing to the same
I
things?
think that's kind of important that you're
Mhm.
agreeing to the
Mhm.
same things.
Yeah.
Or maybe number three, are there other things you can send me, such as the staff or employee handbook or the parent handbook, even, or some of the key school policies that I can read through before I sign?
Yeah, having an awareness of those other key documents that your potential school has should like really set your mind at ease. That's if it's even racing in the first place.
And another question that many want to ask about is if you're signing one of those less detailed contracts
Mhm.
is the fourth question. What happens if things change,
Yeah.
such as my job duties, my salary, or my job title?
Mhm.
Do we sign future amendments or do we sign a new contract each time?
Yeah, mind you, you will likely only encounter these limited detail contracts if you're signing on for one of the smaller local schools. Ones we mentioned that might be a tier 3 or potentially even a tier 2 school.
Again, in episode 3, we broke down the informal categorization teachers use
Mhm.
to discuss schools in terms of facilities, expectations, and inclusions. Go over to our website as well at connectedglobal.org to download the School Tiers Explained document. This free handy resource is also linked in the show notes below for you.
That's right. It's such a great resource and can really help you when you start out and learning the lingo in this expansive international school realm.
And it is a whole nother language.
Alphabet soup, as we said.
For
Yeah.
real. But on the flip side, you'll find that the advice we just gave about the shorter contract details doesn't tend to match when talking about the bigger, often called Tier 1 schools.
Mhm.
These are schools generally with international affiliations, branches, and potentially franchises all over the world.
And there are a lot of these type of schools too. These larger school contracts often become far more detailed, typically including all of the standard things you might expect from a teaching contract in your home area, including job descriptions and duties, employment terms, compensation and benefits, taxation and deductions, housing and relocation, travel and flights.
Medical insurance and well being, leave entitlements,
Mhm.
professional development, performance appraisals and probation timelines, termination and notice needed, confidentiality and data protection clauses, code of conduct and safeguarding.
And of course, forced majeure and act of God closure clauses,
Oof.
governing law, and many times additional appendices.
Whew, no wonder those contracts get so
That's
long.
right. I've signed contracts as long as 30 pages and others as short as 2.
Hmm.
But both schools, I still got paid and I still legally worked there. Trust me. Okay. These experiences do not come down to the contracts. I know you are just starting out and you want to trust someone in another country with your family's future and security. So it can be nerve wracking. We get it.
Yeah, and what we really want to emphasize most here is don't be shocked when the contract doesn't answer all of your
Mhm.
questions. As we said, this could be for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, the biggest thing you need to know is that you can ask for more information and for extra clarification in the conversations around your contract.
Mhm.
They want you if you're at the contract talking stage,
Good
okay?
point.
So, from my time working in HR, I know that we don't tend to change our set contract because it's an external lawyer or an accountant outside handling it. Like that's when you're working for the smaller schools, and that would be far too costly to change it every time somebody wanted to. But if you do need more details, you can usually trust the emails and the mutual agreements and promises that are exchanged via written communication.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Above all, you shouldn't necessarily be worried if things don't seem as spelled out
Mhm.
as compared to contracts you may be used to, especially when you're trying to gain experience at some of the smaller, perhaps lesser known international schools. It's totally okay.
Yeah, for a nice little visual of what we've summarized as potential inclusions on the top tier or the more comprehensive schools, we've put this down in the show notes
Mhm.
here, or you can go over to our website at connectedglobal.org to download the common clauses in comprehensive school contracts.
So, what happens when you don't have all those things in your
Mhm.
contract, or potentially the salary isn't set out clearly? Or maybe you're like me and you don't even really know if you can negotiate things, or you just accept what is offered to you. How do you know if there's even any room for negotiating better
Mhm.
terms or maybe bumping up my benefits?
Mhm.
I guess the thing I need to know is there any wiggle room at all in the numbers that they give me?
Yeah. Well, the best answer to this, I think, is yes and no.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah,
That's
and no.
super helpful,
Yeah,
Trish.
right. That's what I'm here for. Okay. In this next section, we want to cover where you can potentially negotiate and where you shouldn't even bother. Okay. We're going to speak from our own personal experience. So if yours differs, please share it in the comments below or send us a message. Your advice to others might be exactly what they need in order to help their upcoming negotiations.
For sure. Many of us as Americans or British teachers are used to a very, very clear salary scale back home.
Hmm.
These
Hmm.
are often on a set table in each school district or region, and they're set out by the years of experience
Hmm.
matched with the level of education that you have. And this is referred to as your step. And
Hmm.
there's usually not a lot of wiggle room for
Yep.
negotiating above wherever you place on that.
In all honesty, I'd almost say that in these cases, there is zero negotiation if a salary scale is published with your school. Just being honest.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
that's good to know, I think.
Hmm.
Many salary
Yeah.
scales max out at recognizing 20 years of
Hmm.
experience and up to the PhD or doctorate level of education.
Hmm.
No, what we're saying here likely doesn't apply to senior leadership as their
Hmm.
contracts are negotiated in totally different ways.
Yeah. Instead, we're talking about those experienced teachers and or new teachers even, you'd be at the beginning of the salary scale, but experienced teachers and potentially middle managers who might have multiple years of experience and be expecting to be over on the higher end of that scale.
Hmm.
But do not be surprised if the school won't bring you on their top step over there, even if you technically qualify for it.
Okay, so I'm sure people are asking themselves, so where would a teacher land then,
Mhm.
if not where they qualify on the scale?
Now, this may not be true everywhere, but it's my experience that schools often bring you in at the around their max step of 17 or 18, right? So you are already you will incrementally grow after that every year. That's not a
Mhm.
problem. But you're already on the top end of their scale, and it's generally not negotiable even if you have more years of experience.
Right. And you have to remember that in many cases, the more experienced teachers are coming in with kids, just
Mhm.
as Trish and I both
Yep.
do. So that's an added perk on most of these contracts because
Mhm.
school costs can be so high, and
Mhm.
having your child covered is a huge benefit we sometimes take for granted.
Yep, for sure. And the more experienced a teacher is, the more expensive they generally are for a school to get. So
Right.
I sometimes look back at my old Minnesota school district and I see that big number on
Hmm.
their published to like in the newspaper scale, and I just tear up and I sort of think like, why am I not back there?
It's okay.
But the big number is far from what you will see out here in the international realm. Okay, so don't be too entitled with that. Okay, you've got to think about all of the other things that come with it, with the number that's here and all of the things that you have to pay out of that number you see back home.
Right. And I've had this talk with so many of my friends fantasizing about the salary back home,
Yep.
like you. And if you're coming into this realm, this
Mhm.
international realm with the expectations of Western pay when you're
Yeah.
abroad, you may be really disappointed unless you focus your search on a few specific countries and types of schools.
Mhm.
Salaries are often set based on local conditions and cost of living, which I think makes sense
Yep.
for a lower or even higher salary.
Mhm.
Cost of living usually balances it all out.
Mhm.
But this is why going over to our annually updated country guides on our website can really help in making those big decisions.
Yep. In my experience, the places where I have signed and was able to negotiate my salary like slightly were in the more local or bilingual schools.
Hmm.
Those places often have local contracts, and the reality is just that there's usually one decision maker at the top of these schools.
Mhm.
So they haven't always set out the formal or transparent hiring structures, such as salary scales, because they haven't needed to yet.
And what were you able to negotiate?
I have managed to move them up on their offer just a bit. Like we're talking 200 to 300 euros max per year.
Hmm.
Or maybe I was successful in advocating for an annual local transportation pass, and but I always backed it up. Like this is an investment in me and the product I can provide and the work I can do in the classroom
Mm.
and like what you would be gaining by hiring me. And
Hmm.
so why this was a benefit that my family needed.
Right. And meanwhile, the larger schools or franchise schools that have board members or foundations behind them,
Mhm.
they generally have set scales that provide a framework they must hire
Mhm.
within, as budgets, are approved far higher up on
Yep.
that decision chain. Know that it often isn't the principal or even the hiring manager who has any ability to even change the number on your
Yeah.
offer. So while you may want to try it, you might not want to die on that negotiation hill.
Really playing hardball at a school that you really want to go to
Yeah,
may mean that opportunities can be lost if you dig in your heels and you try to strong arm them into negotiations, and it can be off-putting for those
I
schools. Yeah.
bet. So, long story short, you
Hmm.
can ask some questions if you're
Hmm.
hoping to negotiate or it looks like there's room to. For example, you could ask, do you have a published pay scale that I can see?
Yep. This is a great question if you want to see yearly incremental raises, such
Hmm.
as cost inflation raises, especially if you're hoping to stay with a school for a longer or extended time. Many local or bilingual smaller schools will sign you to a set amount. But be clear if there are inflation or annual increases attached to that set amount.
Right.
As of the time of filming this episode, the average inflation rate in Europe hovers between 2 to 3% annually, which means your salary hopefully adjusts annually at least that much to compensate for it. This is another great area to ask your employer about, especially if they don't have a shareable salary scale
Hmm.
or if they're trying to lock you in, especially for like a 3-year contract at one set price.
Right. You can also ask, is my salary negotiable or
Mhm.
fixed by steps or years?
Or maybe you can clarify which currency am I paid in, when, and how does cost of living, inflation, and exchange rate risk factor in?
Oh, and that's a super great question,
Hmm.
especially in the countries with high inflation rates
Hmm.
or, the ones with unstable currencies, as inflation or cost of living adjustment clauses become super critical.
Definitely. I've many times signed contracts that said I'd be paid partially in local currency
Hmm.
and partially in something like USD, but the
Hmm.
salary would be tied to an international fund guaranteeing minimum rate fluctuation. And I didn't understand it, but it always worked out for me in the
Well,
end.
that's the
Yeah.
important part. Another great question is to make sure that the contract somehow is answering, will the pay increase for taking on extra duties,
Hmm.
such as extra clubs or potentially extra leadership
Yep.
promotions as the time goes on? Often
Mhm.
things like that change when you get on the ground. So knowing up front can really help you out.
Yeah. And when your future is a bit uncertain because the job is related to school growth, so like the school is up and coming, you can
Hmm.
sometimes get them to add in a clause to protect you. Okay. In a recent leadership contract that I signed, I negotiated a clause that read annual performance related rates. Annual performance raises to be considered based on annual reviews and performance targets mutually set.
Hmm.
I mean, that clause really makes me feel like I'm helping building towards the future of the school and I'm in control of my success, especially as key performance indicators often become part of management level job descriptions.
Yes. Above all, we want you to realize there is no real industry standard for
Hmm.
teaching contracts out here.
Hmm.
They vary from country to country, from
Hmm.
school size to potential school tier.
Yep.
And the more informed you are about these things will make you less shocked and hopefully less
Yeah.
nervous after you've been through all of those in depth interviews, only to receive a very vague and simply worded contract. It
Like, is
doesn't.
this it?
But it doesn't mean that it's a bad school and that you have to run.
Not at all. Now let's take a look at legal protections in your contract, such as probationary periods, renewal clauses, or exit notification periods. Your contract may look solid on paper. You always want to know that you're prepared as you venture out into this life abroad.
Yeah, and we've all heard a horror story or two,
Mm,
and there are some truthful ones out there as well about schools not paying on time or closing
yeah,
their doors and leaving teachers stranded without a visa
yeah,
mid-year.
yeah,
Ugh. We know that those are your biggest fears, and they were once ours too.
for sure. And in my 20 plus years abroad, I want to reassure you, I have only twice encountered teachers who were fleeing from terrible schools like this for these types of reasons. But both of these teachers were coming from war-torn countries, like unexpected conflicts. So you can't prepare for this,
Yeah.
This is something that is actually covered in many of the contracts abroad, happily enough. As you may or may not remember from an earlier episode, I was in the middle of my 3-year Chinese teaching contract when COVID hit. And we were
Yay.
all out scattered across the globe because it was Chinese New Year and we weren't sure. We were on holiday, not sure if we should come back to China at the time.
Ugh.
But for those of us who did, our contracts protected us. And that feels like a lifetime ago, thank God.
But thank God that
Thank
your
God.
contract protected you. And
Yeah.
I assume that's what you meant earlier by some schools having the force majeure clauses.
Yep.
Or what happens when an act of God or
Yep.
war or pandemic closes your school.
Or flood, like my last year, my school flooded.
Oh, that's right.
So
I
yeah,
remember that.
so it's just awful. So these happen. They happen. So,
Life.
but contracts do often protect us with that. So now we've all learned that COVID, pandemic, all of these things, it's real.
Yeah.
And most contracts protect you. So this is good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've also gone into some of the online chat forums and gleaned some of the most frequently asked questions. So many questions we saw revolve around the notice period and having to leave one contract and start another.
Mm-hmm.
For example, one discussion forum we saw said, my contract of employment makes no mention of notice periods, and I don't really understand my position if I were to hand in my resignation.
Oh, to be honest, this is a pretty common question I see, like especially in the smaller or more locally owned schools, they just don't put it in the contract.
Right.
So we've all been shocked like out there about how early the resignation period or the like notice of intent it's called period is becoming for teachers. It's all over the chat groups. It's sometimes as early as October. You want me to tell you what I'm doing next November or next
year,
next August when I don't know what I'm doing in November, so. But remember, general practice is mid-November for schools to ask this because they need to do their budget planning for the following year and they need to get a jump on the earlier November and December job fairs for hiring new teachers.
Yeah, but what if I am happy in November, but I'm not a fortune teller and I don't know what I'm not.
You're not.
Surprise. But I don't even know what my future experience at the school is going to be. I don't know if I'm going to want to stay.
Of course, there are always last minute changes of mind or end of year unexpected shifts, but this does put a big burden on school leadership at the busiest time of their year. Like Brandy and I know, like we're in June, we are writing schedules. We are making class lists for the following year. We are enrolling students. So like, we don't want to work our whole summer too hiring new teachers. And unlike giving a 3-month or a standard 2-week notice back in America, you have to take into account how long visa applications and approvals and this whole process take to move people from country to country.
Right.
If you understand that process from the bigger picture, I hope you'll be a little less shocked that schools are asking for as intent as early as they are. It gives them a big heads up.
Yeah. And I guess the biggest thing is generally honesty is always going to be your best policy. And the sooner you know that you're definitely looking, the sooner the school can also do their planning. We know that this is a transient lifestyle. And as much as we want to keep our teachers at school for continuity and stability, we also know that teachers have a million different reasons for wanting to move on.
Yeah. And understanding the wording of your contract up front regarding of when you must notify them or if they might actually withhold a recommendation if you don't notify them. I've heard of that lately. Like these can impact you greatly. So I've personally never had anyone treat anyone badly in the last 6 months of the school year because they had announced in November that they were leaving. If anything, we just had more fun parties along the way.
Okay, but on the other hand, I've worked in environments where teachers hesitated to be honest about leaving, largely due to leadership's past reactions to staff departures. I mean, it does exist out there.
It does.
My advice to you is just to cover your bases. Hope for the best, of course, but go through what it would look like if the worst happened, if you needed to leave on unhappy terms. Be aware of what your summer pay would look like as well. Perhaps it's written into your contract that you don't receive a summer pay. And if so, just knowing this ahead of time can give you the foresight to save your money at least and be prepared if you need to leave before your next contract begins.
Yep. And a lot of teachers assume that their contract is for 1 year, meaning 12 months of pay, including the summer as a paid portion of the contract. We just assume that.
Yeah, but this isn't always the case. I've seen 2-year contracts that start mid-August and then they end on June 30th. So that leaves all of July and half of August free, unpaid. And this can leave teachers thinking that they have a summer paycheck coming, but in reality, they don't.
That's not nice.
Yeah, it's definitely not kind, but it's something that you need to plan for, like I said. Thankfully, this isn't the standard, but I guess paying you for all of the summer that you're not technically working for them anymore, it's not legally required. It's just a basic industry standard of kindness, I think. Above all, just read well before you sign, or at least ask questions if you see this discrepancy.
However, be familiar with the fact that about half of the world doesn't follow the Northern Hemisphere academic calendar year, which generally lasts from August to mid-June. Many Southern Hemisphere schools start in late January or early February and break in November for the end of the year.
That's a great point. Some other things, aside from that we suggest you research before you move is how well are you protected in the specific country you're headed to?
Yep.
Like, are there specific rules to foreign hires for that country?
Yeah. Are there specific labor laws that foreign nationals must adhere to?
Do you need to register with the local Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Or does your school help you with that? These, you can get fines if you're not registered. And if you aren't making sure that someone's taking care of that step, it can be a big problem.
For sure. And what are the termination or renewal terms, and are they clearly written in your contract? If not, what does local law say to protect you if something should happen?
And also, are deductions specified, such as your role in local and international taxes, utilities, pension pay-ins, and possible reimbursements when you leave the country?
Yeah, remember we talked about that in South Korea. You can pick up some money. At least you used to be able to when you leave a country.
I gotta go there.
Yeah. let check out the rules first. I don't know. Is it still that way? So does the contract also include any red flag clauses? I mean, such as large penalties for early leaving. Sometimes your bonus is withheld, if you don't complete all 3 years. So are there vague job duties or one-sided renewal terms? Keep all of these things in mind and just sign wisely.
Bottom line, if something's not written in the contract, it's safe to assume you don't have it. If it's something really important to you, try to get them to amend the contract or at least put it in writing somewhere, even via email, so you can legally fall back on that if worse comes to worse.
Yeah, generally, the smaller a school is, the more flexible they are in this part, which seems maybe counterintuitive. But on the other hand, as they often need to then consult their external lawyer or accountant, be aware that this process might take you a little bit of extra time in the signing of the contract.
Okay, let's shift to region-specific realities now. How do contract norms differ in Europe, Africa, Asia, and South America?
Knowing what is normal in a region really helps you best gauge your offer.
For Europe, like in our Czech Republic, contracts tend to be bilingual, leaner in detail, and tied to more local labor law, as we shared in the previous section. Western European schools have a long tradition of hiring international staff and recruiting global students. And often they have limited contractual add-ons because the other security benefits of Europe often factor into their desirability. However, Central and Eastern Europe has a host of fantastic international and bilingual schools, and they have more coming on every year. And many of these offer really great benefits, especially considering local conditions.
By comparison, contracts in Asia may be far more detailed, often explicitly stating the benefits like flight, housing, allowances, bonuses, and sometimes even inflation clauses.
Meanwhile, in Africa, there is still a lot of variation, especially as this is a key area of global growth at present. Schools are coming in line to international norms, and their job advertising reach is going out farther than ever before. This is a continent that, with over 50 sovereign nations in various states of development, has too much range country to country to even begin to generalize.
I think that's a good point. And then now jumping back to the South American realm, again, you're likely going to be encountering bilingual contracts again. So most teachers and job postings advertise moderate benefits when compared globally, and taxes and deductions may be a little less transparent as the rules in these countries are often in flux. Again, these are generalizations that we're finding.
Right. So what can teachers, both new or experienced, understand regarding regional generalities? Know that schools are often competitive with their own market, not necessarily across the entire globe.
So true. Okay, you should explore. What are the typical contract lengths in the region you're interested in? Like, is it 1 year probationary, 2 or 3 years fixed with possibility for renewal?
Okay, also, what are the standard benefits and
Mhm.
allowances within that country?
Yeah, just because you get housing in one, don't expect it in another, right?
Right.
How are legal contract disputes handled locally if there are any issues?
Is the school experienced with foreign hires, or will you be the lucky first one? That can change
Mm.
the norms.
Yeah. And also, if you're moving between regions, beware of assuming your previous contract provisions carry over. The local context can really change everything. All right, let's pull this all together. We've covered a lot today, so let's zoom out and look at the big takeaways.
First, contract details. Know which language version is binding, not blinding, and what's
Mhm.
actually in the job description.
Second, salary and benefits. Know whether you're on a salary scale or whether there's a little bit of room for negotiation. Check this against the local currency, the cost of living, inflation, and allowances.
Third, legal protections. Make sure termination, renewal, notice,
Mhm.
and benefits are clearly spelled out, or that you've investigated what the local laws are at least, if your future contract is a bit vague.
Yep. And fourth, consider things in their regional context. Understand the norms in that specific country or that region and compare your offer accordingly.
And with all of these in mind, you'll be prepared to ask the right questions, watch out for potential warning signs,
Yep.
and know your rights as best you can.
Bottom line, your contract is not just a formality, it's the foundational safety net of your overseas experience. Read it, question it, and make sure you're signing something you understand. I love the mime here and feel comfortable with. Okay. Remember, we've been busy curating country specific guides that will put so much of this information together already for you in one place. We've done all the research and we're here to help you on your journey.
That's right. You don't have to navigate this alone. Head over to our website at connectedglobal.org, where you can buy our annually updated country guides, as Trish was saying, or you can also book a personal consultation with us, whether you have questions about your contract, maybe you want to sharpen your negotiating questions, or maybe you just want to walk through your region specific offers.
And while you're there, check out our common clauses in comprehensive school contracts. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
As well as other great resources, checklists, guides, comparison tools, all designed with your questions in mind to make your next move a little easier.
Most importantly, we'd love to hear from you. Help out another connected friend and tell us what's been the hardest part of reviewing your contracts, or how have they changed over time?
Yep.
Was there any clauses that surprised you? Feel free to drop us a message as well. Give us a review or share this episode with a colleague who's about to sign their first overseas contract.
Until next time, may your contracts be clear,
your benefits be solid,
and your relocation be smooth and international.
Yes. Jeez, thank you. I like how that was the beginning of the thing. Yes. We got to start over. I'm sorry. Couldn't pull it together.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Dang it.
I'm sorry.
This is your one do-over, Brandy.
That actually warmed
You're
me up
making
fast.
sacrifice right there.
My hand.
Next time you'll have a glove.